In a shocking development, $6.4 trillion in market value vanished in just 48 hours, leaving millions of Americans watching their retirement savings evaporate. This unprecedented market collapse, triggered by Donald Trump's tariff policies, has sparked nationwide outrage and protests. The Dow Jones and S&P 500 experienced dramatic plunges, creating what financial experts are calling a perfect storm of economic instability. What's particularly concerning is the impact on ordinary Americans. Those counting on their 401ks and pension plans for retirement security are seeing their life savings diminished. While families grapple with this financial crisis, Trump was spotted at a Saudi-funded golf tournament, posting messages stating only the weak lose. This disconnect between the administration's response and the economic reality has fueled public anger, with protests erupting in Washington, D.C. and New York. Major corporations including Apple, Tesla, Qualcomm, and Whirlpool are reeling from the impact of Trump's 34% tax on American exports. Small businesses and consumers nationwide are struggling with soaring prices on everything from groceries to automobiles. Warren Buffett has publicly criticized these policies, warning they'll only punish working families and honest businesses. Social media has exploded with criticism, with hashtags like Trump Eyes Destroying America trending nationwide. The central question emerging from this crisis: does Trump truly understand the consequences of his economic decisions? As prices continue to rise and savings continue to fall, Americans are questioning whether the administration has the capacity to address this self-inflicted economic wound. This market collapse has become a defining moment in Trump's presidency, with voters now openly questioning his economic competence and commitment to American families' financial well-being. Breaking news that's shaking Wall Street and the White House. The Dow Jones plummeted over 720 points in a single devastating session, while a White House press conference meant to restore confidence instead sparked constitutional concerns and market panic. The financial earthquake on March 14th sent shockwaves through the American economy. The S&P dropped more than 113 points, and the Nasdaq suffered a crushing decline of nearly 500 points, the steepest fall in months. But the numbers only tell half the story. What's truly rattling investors and citizens alike is the administration's response. A Fox News poll, traditionally aligned with the administration, revealed a stunning 56% of Americans disapprove of Trump's economic handling, with only 43% believing the White House is fulfilling its duties. In what was supposed to be a reassuring press conference, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt's statements instead triggered new concerns. When pressed about the possibility of a third term, a clear violation of constitutional limits, Leavitt's response raised eyebrows. The president answers honestly and candidly with a smile, and then everybody here melts down about his answer. Rather than addressing the market crisis with concrete solutions like interest rate cuts, small business relief, or tax suspensions, the administration focused on deflecting questions about constitutional boundaries and defending National Security Advisor Mike Waltz's position. The market needed clear economic direction. Instead, it got vague assurances and concerning hints about power consolidation. This comes as tensions mount over planned tariff policies that experts warn could further destabilize the already fragile economic situation. Meanwhile, in a developing situation, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's response to these events threatens to add another layer of complexity to North American economic relations. The implications of his upcoming announcement could reshape trade dynamics across the continent. Stay tuned as this story continues to unfold. The impact on your retirement savings, investment portfolios, and the broader American economy hangs in the balance. In a bold diplomatic move that's sending shockwaves through Washington, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has chosen Europe over the United States for his first official visit, signaling a shift in Canada's foreign policy. Breaking from tradition, Carney bypassed Washington, instead heading to Paris for meetings with French President Emmanuel Macron, followed by talks with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. This pivot comes as Canada seeks to diversify its partnerships and reduce U.S. market dependence. The Prime Minister's European tour coincides with plans to transform Canada into an energy superpower. Sources project that renewable energy will constitute 30% of the nation's electricity production within 5 years, creating thousands of jobs and strengthening Canada's economic independence. Carney's administration has made it clear that Canada won't tolerate what it sees as unfair U.S. trade policies. Canada is now exploring defense partnerships with European suppliers, specifically Sweden, potentially ending its military procurement relationship with American manufacturers. This repositioning isn't just about trade, it's about national security and technological advancement. Canada is pursuing participation in European weapon development programs and defense systems initiatives, marking a departure from its reliance on U.S. military technology. The timing is particularly noteworthy, coming as the U.S. stock market faces a $6.4 trillion loss triggered by recent tariff policies. These economic tremors have prompted Canada to accelerate its plans for diversifying partnerships. Industry analysts suggest this could reshape North American trade dynamics. With Canada potentially joining efforts to restructure global supply chains, we might be witnessing the early stages of a major realignment in international trade relationships. For more on this developing story, stay tuned. This is John Marshall, and we'll be right back after these messages. In a shocking move that sent global markets into turmoil, Donald Trump declared what he called Tariff Liberation Day, announcing sweeping trade restrictions against major U.S. trading partners. The announcement, lacking specific details, has triggered widespread economic uncertainty. Fox News correspondent Peter Doocy revealed, "There's still time for changes, but we're looking at either a 20% flat tariff or adjustable rates based on other countries' tariffs on U.S. goods." This vagueness has sent Wall Street into a tailspin. The immediate aftermath saw the stock market bleeding red, with inflation spiking and businesses scrambling to adjust. Americans are feeling the pinch, with some returning to budget meals. The agricultural sector is particularly concerned, with farmers warning about survival. Even stable industries are taking hits. American popcorn exporters are losing European market share, while meat processors face uncertain futures. Senator Tom Tillis, RNC, raised concerns. When we talk about a little pain, we're discussing farmers one crop away from bankruptcy. The Wall Street Journal stated there's no historical evidence that mass tariffs have ever benefited a major economy. Bloomberg's analysis suggests these 25% tariffs might hand global auto industry leadership to China. Meanwhile, Asian nations are forming new alliances, with China, Japan, and South Korea creating an Asian fast and furious industrial powerhouse. As U.S. production costs soar due to tariffs, overseas competitors are celebrating. A recent Wisconsin judicial election may signal growing public frustration. Democrat-backed Susan Crawford defeated a MAGA-endorsed candidate, despite millions in opposition spending. Analysts view this as a referendum on economic chaos. As Canada faces these new threats, global markets continue their downward spiral. The question remains, will Trump's Liberation Day liberate American prosperity, or has it just declared economic war on our closest trading partners? In a startling escalation of tensions, former President Trump has unveiled a sweeping global tariff plan, marking what he dramatically termed Liberation Day across social media platforms. This announcement comes as the U.S. economy shows concerning signs of instability, with soaring gas prices and recession fears. The proposed blanket tariff policy has drawn sharp criticism from both international allies and domestic political figures. Most notably, Canada's relationship with the U.S. has deteriorated following Trump's unsubstantiated accusations about drug-related issues. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's response has been swift, implementing countermeasures including tourism restrictions and trade boycotts. Former Trump ally Doug Ford stated, "We will maximize the pain for America. Sorry for the American people, but it's Trump's fault." Traditional Republican supporters are distancing themselves, with Senators McConnell, Collins, and Paul opposing the tariff plans. This internal party friction comes as federal courts issue an unprecedented 15 injunctions in 1 month against the administration's policies, compared to 14 injunctions during the entire previous 3 years. The White House has challenged these judicial interventions, with the press secretary arguing that low-level district court judges cannot override presidential authority. This has sparked debate about the balance of power between executive and judicial branches. Meanwhile, economic experts warn that global tariffs could exacerbate financial pressures, potentially accelerating recession. Rather than addressing domestic challenges like inflation and rising costs, Trump's focus on international trade disputes appears to be diverting attention from critical economic issues. The administration's stance has isolated the U.S. from traditional allies while failing to provide solutions for mounting domestic problems. As one analyst noted, instead of making America great again, these policies risk making recession real fast. In a startling display of dissent, over half the attendees at an Indiana town hall walked out during Representative Victoria Spartz's presentation, highlighting tensions between lawmakers and constituents. Chants of, "Do your job," resonated throughout the venue, marking a significant moment in political discourse. The controversy centers around the Dogecoin plan, reportedly crafted by former President Trump with support from Elon Musk. While marketed as an efficiency measure, the plan's implications for Social Security, healthcare, and education have sparked widespread concern. The administration's approach to judicial independence has raised questions about governmental checks and balances. Chief Justice John Roberts issued a warning after Musk called for the impeachment of judges, stating, "Impeachment is never an appropriate response to disagreement with a judicial ruling." The White House's communication strategy has evolved controversially, with a deportation video set to closing time drawing criticism. This shift from traditional press releases to meme-style messaging reflects a transformation in political communication. New polling shows 62% of Americans believe the federal government is heading in the wrong direction. This sentiment was exemplified in Virginia, where the lieutenant governor's statements ignited an online firestorm. The administration's push to streamline government operations has raised concerns about oversight. Officials' statements about eliminating anything that doesn't serve American interests have prompted debates about governance and regulatory functions. These developments, combined with economic pressures and social program cuts, suggest a political realignment. The silent protest in Indiana, notable for its bipartisan nature, may signal a fundamental shift in America's political landscape. As these changes unfold, the line between effective governance and power abuse grows thin, with critics warning that once crossed, such boundaries may be difficult to restore. Breaking news from Capitol Hill as tensions escalate both domestically and internationally, threatening America's economic stability and energy security. Virginia's Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears sparked outrage with her statement, "If you've never had a job, what do you have to fight for?" amid proposals to dismantle federal agencies, putting thousands of government workers at risk. The political divide deepens as Republican town halls face mounting criticism. In Maine, Senator Susan Collins' empty chair became a symbol of political abandonment across social media. Meanwhile, Democratic Representative Robert Garcia's town hall drew support for his stance on protecting Social Security and Medicare, highlighting the growing ideological gap in American politics. The most alarming development comes from Canada. Ontario has threatened to impose a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the United States, potentially affecting several states. This isn't just about power. Canada holds multiple economic leverage points, including $70 billion in annual crude oil exports and 9 billion cubic meters of vital LNG supplies. Prime Minister Carney's administration has taken a hard line, warning of immediate retaliation against any new U.S. tariffs. The automotive sector faces particular vulnerability, with Canada's $30 billion car and parts export relationship at risk. Canada has revoked tax incentives for U.S. electric vehicles, impacting Tesla and threatening to drive production costs in Detroit to record highs. The old relationship based on economic integration and military cooperation is over, declared Carney, marking a historic shift in U.S.-Canada relations. With nearly $45 billion in cross-border trade at stake, this diplomatic crisis threatens to reshape North American economic dynamics. As town halls across America become battlegrounds of public opinion, these combined pressures signal what analysts call a potential political sea change in American governance. In a significant escalation of trade tensions, Canada's strategic pivot threatens to reshape North American economic dynamics, with Prime Minister Carney announcing potential retaliatory measures impacting U.S. consumers. The stakes are high in agricultural trade, where bilateral exchanges reach billions annually, focusing on canola, wheat, meat, and dairy products. Canada's threat to impose tariffs on canola exports, valued at $6 billion USD per year, could trigger a surge in U.S. food prices. Economic experts warn that if implemented, American families will face immediate impacts at grocery stores, potentially driving food inflation to unprecedented levels. Taking the offensive, Carney has initiated diplomatic discussions with European and Asian partners. Agreements with France and the UK regarding energy and automotive supply chains signal Canada's determination to diversify trade relationships. When questioned about distancing from U.S. influence, Carney stated, "We will need to dramatically reduce our reliance on the United States, pivot our trade relationships elsewhere, and do things previously thought impossible." This stance represents more than retaliation. It marks a restructuring of Canada's economic strategy. From energy and automobiles to agriculture, Canada is wielding economic tools to counter Trump's tariff policies. The government's willingness to implement these measures while building independent trade relationships poses a challenge to Washington. The consequences for the U.S. economy could be severe if Canada implements its retaliatory strategy. These measures threaten to disrupt markets and alter the North American economic landscape. As Canada forges stronger trade alliances with Europe and Asia, the U.S. faces losing its privileged position in North American trade relations. This situation marks a critical juncture in U.S.-Canada relations, with implications that could reshape both nations' economic future. The question remains: how will Washington respond to this challenge to its economic influence?